So what's a strategy for early morning training sessions or games? A lot of times athletes aren't sure what to do. They can't stomach a whole meal in the morning. So I'm going to give you some strategies that might be helpful for younger athletes. Just as far as why this is important is because when you're sleeping, your body is not eating, right? So it's fasting overnight, meaning you're not taking in any food. But remember, the system is still using fuel, especially your brain. Your brain is using quite a bit of fuel throughout the night. So in order for that to go in a healthy way, the body has to use sugar or glucose throughout the night to keep your brain active. So what it does is it removes the glucose from your liver, and that goes into the bloodstream so that the bloodstream can then supply the brain with appropriate amount of fuel to go throughout the night. Well, in the morning, the body may have lower amounts of stored glucose in the liver. It may also have lower amounts of blood sugar as well. So that's kind of the process by what's happening at night. And you kind of want to replenish that. You want to top that off so that you're ready for the early morning sessions, but knowing that some athletes don't tolerate a high amount of food, we want to have a strategy for that. So how do you know when you really should eat prior to an AM training? And the basics of it are, if you are hungry, your body is telling you that you need to consume some type of calories. So generally speaking, if you're hungry, you should make a plan of what you're going to eat. Now, it doesn't have to be a huge meal, and we'll talk you through some of the suggestions, but if you are hungry, don't not eat. You also should think about getting some type of fuel in you if your training session is particularly intense, or the training session is going to be greater than 30 minutes. So if it's a walkthrough, maybe you don't necessarily need to eat prior to that session, but also, if you know that your session or tournament is going to have multiple episodes throughout the day, you want to get started on that fuel so that you have enough time to get it in. Another kind of situation that you might think about is if you had an intense day the day before, then you want to think about getting some food in early before the training session. So if you're in a tournament, you had an overtime game the day before, you want to think about a plan of having to get some calories in the morning before your next game. So one of the things that you can know or look for to see that you might need to be better prepared for your competition or training is that if you notice that your intensity kind of drops by the end of the workout, so you don't feel like you have the same intensity, maybe more so than usual, that might be a tip off that, hey, I probably am not eating enough in the morning because I'm a little drained from my overnight fast. Also, if you're planning on trying to gain weight or muscle mass, think about this. You only have a certain amount of times in the day that you can eat, a certain amount of time throughout the day that you can eat. And it's important to take advantage of all of that time, especially if you really have to pack in the calories to get the amount of energy balance that you want. That's really important to start that early. Now, each person is different. So just remember that everybody's affected by the type of food that they eat and when they eat it. Some people can eat a heavy meal and some people can't eat much at all. But do not experiment on game day. Do not experiment before there's a very intense session that's very important. You want to make sure that you have a strategy that you've repeated multiple times that you know sits well in your stomach, because you do not want to find out that the food that you ate does not sit well with you prior to a big game. You also want to focus on small meals or snacks. So instead of taking in a big, large kind of pancake breakfast, that might not be for you. So you might want to say, hey, I do small meals, kind of snacks here and there, a banana, a bagel, toast with peanut butter, those type of things that can be easily digested. There is some thought that it needs to really be focused on carbohydrate with a little bit of protein. I think that's generally accepted. And then you want to avoid foods that upset the stomach. So like a high fiber foods, like a big vegetable intake is not really appropriate for before early morning session. A high fat, heavy, hard to digest meal, and then something with a lot of added sugar may upset the stomach, and that might even be these sports drinks where some people can't tolerate them as well and they need to have other alternatives. So if you're about 60 to 90 minutes prior, this is where you can take a more substantial pre-workout meal to provide some sustained energy. So an option might be like a waffle with some peanut butter, maybe some bananas on top. That gives you a good complex of carbs, protein, healthy fat. So it gives you a good mix of what you need, and you'll still have plenty of time to digest that. So when you get to less than an hour before, you really want to stick with light snacks that are easily digestible. So maybe a small bowl of cereal might be helpful with a little bit of milk that's low fat. Even dry cereal can be a good option, easily digestible, transportable. So that might be helpful, especially if you're trying to travel from the hotel to a game. And then 15 to 30 minutes, really high carb, easy on the stomach. So something like a banana is a great option. Again, you can transport it easily. Doesn't need to be, stay cold or anything like that. And that can give a little quick energy boost that blood sugar, refill the tank a little bit after that overnight fast. But I think it's very important to know what your in-game fueling plan is. So sometimes just kind of thinking about it as if, okay, I'm going to need rest stops throughout this training session. What am I going to eat during those rest stops? Is it going to be a sports drink? Is it going to be a little goo or gel or something like that? Those are the different strategies that you want to kind of already have planned, because you know how your body reacts to certain levels of activity. So I think that's really important to keep in mind.